Is the Civil War finally come upon us? Welcome to Stab the Dragon Productions and American Catechism number 49 for DragonFire Cultural Commentary number 18, maybe? Coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas on Monday, January 19th, 2026, where it is sunny and 51 degrees. And I'm sipping on a hot toddy. Sinuses. All right, in 2011, I was reading some Civil War books for the 150th anniversary. And Battle Cry of Freedom by McPherson impressed me in the early chapters that he gave the history leading up to the Civil War. And what really impressed me, the writing was fantastic, the history was great, but it sounded so current, so similar. The political fighting, the contention, bleeding Kansas, the fight in Missouri and Kansas over slavery, all of the potential for slave rebellion. I mean, it sounded so contemporary to me. And I started thinking about the headlines. In those days, Obama was president, and I looked back over the past 10 years or so of the George Bush administration, and I realized this country really is so divided. I believe that we are in the early stages of a civil war. That was in 2011. I looked at the contentious elections that Bush won narrowly, that had to get the Supreme Court involved in the hanging Chad and all that. I looked at the response to 9/11 and how everybody sang Kumbaya there for about a week or 10 days, and then the Democrats attacked Bush and blamed us and defended Muslims all across the country and said, hey, we can't have Islamophobia going on. And there was a total lack of awareness of the history of Islam and the West. And then the war, the early stage of the war in Afghanistan went well, and then it didn't. And then the Iraq war got worse and worse, and it was totally mishandled. and then Obama was elected, and all of a sudden we love Muslims. And Muslims helped found the country, and we're here to fundamentally change America. And I realized strongly by 2011 that this is a Bolshevik revolution. That is, I'd studied Russian history in college extensively, and this looked like a Bolshevik revolution. And so it's like the rioting and the immigrants and the rise of hatred for the police, the crime that was rising, the way the news media biased everything. This is the beginning of a civil war. And then in 2015, when Trump's candidacy was announced, and the way not just the left, but the established Republican guard, the old guard of the Republicans, responded. The hatred for, and at first I was not a Trump fan. I was going to back somebody else, but I didn't know much about Trump at all. But the more I paid attention, the more I realized these people are scared of Trump. They hate him, and he was a lifelong Democrat. And I started paying more attention and realizing that they feared Trump because he was neither a Republican of the old guard nor a Democrat, that he was independent, and he was independently wealthy. He was going to finance his own campaign. And that really caught my attention. It's like, he's a threat. They view him as a threat. Well, by that time, I viewed the establishment as a threat. And so then I latched on to Trump, and it's like, this guy knows the gig, the system is rigged, and he's going to fight the system. And so I was won over. And when I saw the fighting by the Republicans during the first Trump term and the Democrats, the rioting, the crazy investigations and lawsuits, and then the impeachments and the January 6th thing, and then the criminal prosecutions, yeah, I realized the system hated Trump. So now he's defeated the lawsuits and the criminal charges, started running for president again, and they tried to kill him twice. They tried to kill him twice. And the Civil War idea kept growing and growing, and other people are talking about it, for sure. I mean, lots of people are talking about it for several years now. Why do I say Civil War? The opposing sides have no common ground. We view America differently. We view God differently. We have different opinions of what is a man and a woman, of what marriage is. There's different end goals. One side is collectivist. The other side is for the individual and personal liberty and freedom and responsibility. There's no common ground whatsoever. I look at the George Floyd riots of 2020. That was civil war. And it has not abated. And now we're looking at the immigration situation. The whole purpose in the Democrat Biden administration opening the borders wide, letting in millions and millions of people, the whole purpose of that was to change the demographics for voting, to establish the Democrat Party as the sole party in this country to destroy any of the red states' chances of carrying an election. That was the whole goal of that. Now, not the only goal. There's a genuine hatred for white people, for Christians. And so let's just open the floodgates. We hate America, so let's change America. Obama said it explicitly. Yeah, we are here for fundamental change. So when Trump promised he's going to crack down on these illegal immigrants, I was all for that, definitely. So now in the last year, we've watched that in action. And specifically, we're looking at Minneapolis now. And I'm asking, is the Civil War finally upon us? We've been in a slow burner. We've been in a low grade Civil War since I think 2000. But now it's open. You have a governor and a mayor of a major city in America, the governor of a state, openly waging war against the federal government for trying to enforce the laws. They do not want immigration laws enforced, and they're willing to fight for it. And then with the exposure of the scandal there of the Somalians in Minnesota, and how they're ripping off the taxpayers big time, billions and billions of dollars. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This scandal is going to spread all across the country. And we're going to see why our budget deficits have been so huge, in the trillions of dollars. Because people are scamming the system, mainly the Democrats. And they are funding their political party with your tax dollars. That's how it's all working. They are buying votes, importing new voters illegally, and then buying votes. So that's why they're fighting. It's for their survival. So I'm looking at the situation. Now, yesterday, the city's church, it's the Baptist church in Minneapolis, was roughed up by these Democrats and Don Lemon, what a useless POS he is. They invaded that church service, interrupted everything, scared the children, scared the people in the church, took over, and all we got to do is just look at the last 30 years and look at all the church shootings, stabbings, the violence that's gone on from crazy leftists, crazy people, trans people coming into churches, schools, Christian schools, church schools, public schools. And what we see is a multiplication of demonic, evil violence. And so I'm looking at this and saying, the American church, the American Republicans and conservatives really need to look up and be aware that this is, in fact, civil war. Civil wars are horrible. I mean, the bloodiest thing we've ever encountered as a nation is the Civil War. And you had families split up, brothers fighting brothers, sons fighting fathers, towns are split up. I mean, it was horrible. Very bloody situation. We don't want that, but it's upon us. If we do not tamp down on what's happening in Minneapolis right now, immediately, this is going to spread. There needs to be massive consequences here. Politicians need to be in jail, arrested. There needs to be DOJ investigate who's funding these things. Not all of these protesters are just normal citizens out hitting the streets. They bus in rioters and protesters, and that's their job. I've seen people interviewed. Oh yeah, it's my job. I've seen journalists track people from around the country going to protest after protest after protest. It's heavily funded. All the signs that pop up around the country, somebody is producing those signs. That's not cheap. You got to fund that. So this is Bolshevism in action. These are the Bolsheviks. And so what needs to happen? Well, politically what needs to happen is Trump, the DOJ, the FBI, they need to send in the military, the 11th Airborne, to Minneapolis and get that place under control. Absolutely. And any other place that does this. But what about churches? There's political things that Trump can do. But what about churches? I mean, that church was invaded. After all the church shootings in the last 30 years, most churches do have security teams. I know in my church, 17 years ago or so, I organized our security team. I ran it for many years. And, so we had a plan. We had a lot of armed people in our congregation. But this, that was kind of geared towards the active shooter situation. But this is not an active shooter situation. This is a bunch of crazy people with purple hair and nose rings coming in to disrupt your worship service and chant whatever slogans, political garbage that they've got. So, what do you do with that? My initial response is put on chainmail, have a shield with a big red cross on it, and carry a halberd. That's my initial response. But you're going to have to do something physically to stop the crazy left from invading your space. Now, that doesn't mean pull out your guns and start blazing away, but what it means is you're going to have big burly men with sticks to forcibly remove them, to prevent them from gaining entrance. There's going to have to be some kind of a gatekeeper there. And that term gatekeeper or doorkeeper, that actually is an Old Testament term. The sanctuary that Moses set up in the wilderness had doorkeepers, gatekeepers, to keep people out who didn't belong, to protect the the tent of meeting, the sanctuary there, the Holy of Holies. And then when Solomon constructed the temple, they had doorkeepers, armed. They were armed. This is a house of worship, and yet they had armed guards there to protect the sanctuary. I'm saying we need the same thing, that we need people to secure our sanctuaries, secure our churches from the crazy trans activist who wants to kill people, or from the hordes of purple-haired fat lesbians who come in wanting to shout their political stuff, right? There has to be a defense against that. There has to be organized defense. Otherwise, you're helpless. Now, does that interfere with the preaching of the gospel? I don't think so. I think we have a right and a duty to protect our innocent people from the hordes of purple-haired lesbians and Don Lemon, who's essentially the same thing. So we need to wake up, see what time it is, to see what is the level of threat in our society right now. And I'm saying the threat is elevated. We are on the cusp of a shooting civil war. And Minneapolis is ground zero, but you've got places like Portland and Seattle and New York City that are also right there. And so the churches really do need to do something to physically secure their property when they're meeting in a big way, not just guys like me carrying concealed, sitting in the congregation. No, you need to have visible security presence that is strong enough, big enough, carrying a big enough stick, literally. Halberd really sounds good now. To keep these people out, to defend the innocent. I think that's a biblical duty. All right. This is Stab the Dragon for American Catechism with a rant. In hoc signo vinces. Out here.